California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance coming to you from Sacramento. We are joined by Chris Holden. He is a member of the California State Assembly, also Assistant Majority Leader, and recently returned from a trip from Mexico. It literally received nationwide coverage. You were with the governor during this trip, Governor Brown. Before we talk about the trip, how did you get to join the delegation?
Well, I think that my name must have been presented to the governor's staff by the speaker.
Nice.
And so
we thank her.
We thank her.
Right.
I appreciate that, her consideration, and it was an opportunity to go and represent our Assembly House.
What was interesting about the trip is, as the delegation was in California, there was a competing story. It was in Mexico, I should say.
Right.
There was a competing story where the governor of Texas had been sending National Guard troops to the border.
Right.
And so it was a very interesting juxtaposition,
right,
where you, other members of the legislature, the governor, the Chamber of Commerce, I believe, California
yes.
Chamber of Commerce, was there on a trade mission,
right,
with immigration, a discussion point, but in the background,
right,
and then the governor of Texas kind of turning up the heat
yes.
on the whole immigration question.
Yeah, it was received in not the most positive way.
Mr. Perry's move.
That's correct. We met with the president of the Senate, the Mexican Senate.
Right.
And the topic of discussion with that group was on immigration, was on the migrant children and the impact that was having on the United States, but also on Mexico. And they wanted it to be clear that Mexico was also, they had to pass through Mexico, and they have immigration issues of their own. And so it was an interesting perspective that we don't hear all the time.
Right, so let's talk about that before we talk about the trade mission, because that really was the goal, if you don't mind. And
sure.
So you represent a Southern California district. You're not at the border by any stretch. We're in the greater Los Angeles area.
Right.
What are you hearing, feeling, seeing in terms of the unaccompanied minor issue?
Well, I mean, I think there is a lot of concern, I think, across the board about the humanitarian aspect of what's going on and making sure that the children are safe and that they're being taken care of. Then the question is, what happens next?
Right.
And then and how soon are the children sent home, if they're sent home? And so the debate seems to be centering around the transition piece. But I think in terms of understanding the harm, the danger that these young people are exposed to as they travel from Central America to North America, it's harrowing. And
what's remarkable about these unaccompanied minors, you said it well, Mexico is being impacted not so much because its own nationals are fleeing,
right,
it's Central American children fleeing through Mexico.
Right.
I've learned that there's this triangle, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras,
yes,
where most of these, and it's a majority of these unaccompanied minors, that's from where they hail.
Right.
And so they are fleeing violence, they are fleeing drug cartels. So in a lot of ways it breaks your heart,
yes,
but then under our system of laws, is that reason enough to keep the children here, or should we be returning them to their home countries?
And I think that's the debate, that's the crux of the debate that's happening in Washington right now,
right,
in terms of where do we go.
Issue, right?
Yes, but I think clearly we have to pay attention, in California especially, to what we can do to help the children and what kind of support we can offer in this time of transition.
And the governor has said, and he said it in Mexico, that he is interested in creating centers for, I guess, housing while this transition phase marches forward, whether the children stay or do return to their home countries.
Right.
Positive in your mind?
And I think it's positive. I mean, some of the children have family that's here, some do not, and so there's that part of it that I think we can certainly work with the families and make sure that there's that they're included in this part of the process.
When we come back, I want to talk about the trade element of your trip.
Yes.
For our viewers on HLN, thank you so much for joining us. For our other viewers, we'll be right back with Assemblyman Chris Holden. So, sir, let's talk about the trade element, because even though a lot of noise was made about the immigration element, this really was about trade.
Right.
And in some ways, it dovetails right in, because if the economy of Mexico rises, presumably folks wouldn't feel a compulsion to seek a better life in America. Is that fair?
That's fair. And I think the goal here was also to present California to Mexico in a way that we can develop better relationships between the borders, and understanding that there's value that we can share, and also lessons we can learn from Mexico. And the focus was on three distinct areas: climate or environment, education, and then on trade.
Right.
We had a side conversation about tourism, which
we go to Mexico. I mean, plenty of Californians enjoy Ixtapa, Cancun, whatever it may be. I do, I know.
Indeed. And
right.
so we want to make sure that, at least from our end, and that's why the Chamber and others played a vital role in this mission, was to also let those who have means know that there are resources in California and beauty and opportunity for tourism to be a part of. It could be both ways.
It's true. I mean, although it's interesting, I'm sure you know that there has been a bit of a fear factor traveling down to Mexico recently because aside from the triangle I mentioned, there is some violence popping up in the Mexican states.
Yeah, I think it was addressed to some degree, recognizing that there are hot spots that law enforcement is focused on. And then, of course, when you're traveling anywhere in the world, you always have to be mindful of when you go out, what areas you travel. Yeah, and so you want to make sure you get in the right cab and under the right kind of supervision.
I want to get a sense from you about the climate discussion because AB 32 continues to be a hot spot here, if I can say.
Right.
And when Governor Schwarzenegger envisioned AB 32, there was a hope that it would be more regional.
Yeah.
The entire, Mexico, Canada, Oregon, Washington, Nevada.
Right.
I don't think that really happened.
Right, I think that's right, and I think what this focus of the mission was designed to create attention to is that we have to work collaboratively. California can establish as many laws as possible to try to do its part to help remove greenhouse gases from the environment, from the air, clean up air quality, but it's going to be a collaborative effort, and so Mexico can be a regional partner in that effort.
Are they interested?
They are indeed interested, and they not only that, they recognize the importance of taking that stand. They see the scientific data. They understand that the planet is warming up. They know clearly that what we understand are facts about how we need to start to plan our future and be smart about it. But even if California and Mexico collaborate and are on one accord on all of these different issues, it's still going to take the entire world sort of participating in a grander way than they are currently. So what I think this mission was designed to do is let's build a partnership, let's build stronger ties between our countries on these important initiatives so at least we're singing from the same hymn book, then we can take the lead in terms of bringing the attention to global warming and climate change.
I want to ask about education as well. As I think I've told you, we're raising our daughters to speak Spanish. We're not of Latino descent, but we just feel as if...
Smart.
Yeah, we want them to speak Spanish.
Smart.
When we think about programs for them to improve their language skills, everyone's always talking about Spain. Like, send your kids to Spain. But wait a second. We have Mexico.
Right.
Why aren't we sending our kids to Mexico? But it's not part of the vernacular.
Right.
I understand that as part of this trade mission, we're looking to change that.
Yeah, I think what we're also looking to do is recognize that in Mexico there are those who are very learned and studied and researchers, and we're trying to draw on their research capabilities and also with ours. So there's sort of a sharing between our UCs and CSUs and how we can give opportunity for Mexican students to participate in either online or other ways.
Two-way or just one way?
Two-way. So we would be sending our talented researchers to Mexico to participate in their higher academic environment.
Professors or students?
Students.
Okay.
And giving opportunity for study. And so the cross-cultural exchange on an academic level, one is trying to create opportunity for acceptance and involvement in our schools, in our higher education system, but also to share information and research skill sets.
How do we build that momentum?
The MOUs that were established between the two countries is the first, between Mexico and California is sort of a first step.
What about kind of in the Zeitgeist? How do we kind of get, Spain's wonderful, but how about Mexico?
Yeah, I think, you know what, when we look at the kind of businesses that are in Mexico and the kind of research and biotech and high-tech companies that are also originating in that country as well.
That's how we can do it.
There's a linkage.
He is Chris Holden. My name is Brad Pomerance. This is California Edition.